BK Stancil here with Apex News doing our first podcast. We're just going to be looking here at a review of the 2018 Formula One season and more so looking at the changes going into the 2019 season. Tons of new regulations, new drivers, so it should be exciting. First, we're going to start off last race of the season, Abu Dhabi. Lewis Hamilton, another commanding performance, comes home, wins his 51st race out of 100 races in the V6 turbo era. I mean, complete dominance. That's a 51% win percentage. No one's come close to him. And, sealed up his fifth driver's title, getting him up there with the likes of Schumacher and some of the greats. And, he was dominant all season. Vettel fell apart after the summer break, and it was just all Mercedes with Bottas as Hamilton's wingman. And, he locked it up early in Mexico and added another win to the tally in Abu Dhabi today. Probably even more so of a highlight than Hamilton winning is, Fernando Alonso's last race, not only with McLaren but with Formula One. He's retiring after a long, long career in Formula One. Only 2 world championships when it's all said and done. He's been hampered by poor cars the last couple of years of his career, but outstanding driver. Everybody on the grid loves him. And actually a really cool moment at the end of the race, even though he only finished P11, which is, good driving that McLaren. He was, he wasn't supposed to be on the pit straight at the end of the race, and he followed Vettel and Hamilton up there, and they did some synchronized donuts, which the fans loved. And, those are 3 guys that are still from that early era, Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso, who have 11 world championships between the 3 of them. So to see the respect amongst those guys is really cool for some of the fans who weren't around to see, Alonso in his dominant era. So wish him the best of luck going into whatever he may have in store. And then, looking ahead to 2019, you hear the term silly season when talking about drivers going to new teams. But this year was possibly the silliest season because you had changes all across the board. Mercedes starting at the top of the grid, they're going to be staying the same. Lewis Hamilton contracted until 2020, no need to get rid of him. And then Valtteri Bottas, he doesn't rival Hamilton like Nico Rosberg did when he was in that seat, but he plays a good wingman. He is the number 2 driver in that team, and he's kind of accepted it, which makes life easier on both Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. Moving down to Ferrari, you have Sebastian Vettel, who's going to be contracted till 2020. Definitely looking to come back and take the fight to Hamilton for a full season instead of just half a season. As a fan, I'm looking forward to that. But possibly the most surprising driver change is Charles Leclerc taking Kimi Räikkönen's seat and moving up from the Sauber F1 team after just one rookie season. And he's there. He's in a commanding car, one of the top 3 teams as a very young driver, an exciting driver. And all season we saw him push the limits of that Sauber, and he was battling with guys he shouldn't have been battling with all year. So if you put a good car under him, it's going to be extremely exciting to see what he can do. I know I, for one, am looking forward to it. Next on Red Bull, this one hurts. Daniel Ricciardo, he's changed his heart, changed his mind. He's leaving Red Bull after 100 even races with them, 7 wins in that time period. No world championships, sadly, but it's gonna be sad to see him move on to Renault from Red Bull. Max Verstappen, he's contracted until 2020. He's the next big thing. If they can get him a solid car, I think he has a good chance of winning the world championship next year and many years to come. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And who's going to fill that hole for Daniel Ricciardo? Red Bull's announced it's going to be Pierre Gasly. He's driven with Toro Rosso team this past season. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. For myself personally, I've never really been impressed by him. He's a solid driver, but then again, he's been in a midfield car. So maybe if you put that Red Bull chassis under him with a decent Honda motor, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I just don't see someone filling in the way Ricardo did and holding Max even the way Ricardo did. But hopefully for a fan's viewpoint, Gasly can bring something to the table similar to Ricardo. Moving down to Renault, I've spoken on Daniel Ricciardo. He's going to be taking a spot there alongside Nico Hulkenberg. Nico, very solid driver. It'll be interesting to see what Renault can bring to the table as far as their car goes, because you don't sign a guy Daniel Ricciardo to putter around in 12th place. You sign him looking to win races, and if they can actually bring a solid chassis to go along with that engine, it'll be extremely interesting to see if we can get a fourth manufacturer up there racing with the likes of Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. So I'm a big Daniel fan. I hope that he gets a solid car and he takes the fight to him. Down to the American team, Haas. Um, right now, it's looking like Roman Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen, same lineup as this past season. They're the one of the few teams not changing. Solid lineup, solid car. That car, it's been very up and down. In Australia, lights out. Mexico, they're barely scratching 18th place. So if they can find some consistency in that setup, they're going to be able to fight in that midfield pretty solid next year. And next, Force India, they've only confirmed Sergio Perez, who raced with him this past year, and they have confirmed that Esteban Ocon is out of his seat, but they have not announced his replacement. So that's yet to be seen who comes in, but you would think with Lance Stroll's father buying the team that Lance Stroll would fill that spot. He's scheduled to do a test, seat fitting test run with Force India. So everything's pointing towards Lance getting that Force India seat. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You got to feel for Ocon. He's a brilliant driver, but his father doesn't own the team the way Stroll's father does, so that definitely plays a part of it. And teams need money, they need sponsorship, and Ocon's not able to bring that the way Stroll is. Wish him the best of luck in whatever he goes on to do. But if he gets another shot at F1, I'm sure he's going to take it. He's going to be missed on the grid next year. McLaren, what to say about McLaren? They've struggled, to say the least. They're going to be losing Fernando Alonso, who, that is a massive, massive hit for them, both from a fan base and then also just a driver. Fernando Alonso was driving the McLaren car way above its limits. He was dragging that thing around corners. You saw even in Abu Dhabi, to qualify as high as he did, he was leaning across the finish line like a sprinter trying to get through there. And, no one's going to be able to push that car the way Alonso did. So now they're going to have Carlos Sainz coming in and Lando Norris coming in. So that's a complete new lineup. Stoffel Van Dorn, unfortunately, is out of his seat, along with Alonso, who's retired. Van Dorn, he to say it simply, he wasn't getting it done. He looks slow in comparison of Alonso, and you have to feel for the guy to be in such a slow car, but that he's had his shot 2 seasons, couldn't really do anything with it, so they're bringing in Carlos Sainz. He knows what he's doing. He's driven for both Toro Rosso in the past and then Renault this past season, so hopefully he gets a solid chassis under himself, see what he can do. And then you're going to have Lando Norris coming in. Young, exciting racer. He's raced in the lower formulas. He's known for some of his esports racing and, really personable young kid. I hope that he does well. It's always good to have young guys coming in and getting a shot. And I'm, for one, all for, new guys coming in and seeing what they can do. And it should be exciting to have as many young drivers on the grid as we're going to have next year. Toro Rosso, Daniel Kvyat coming back, the nickname the Torpedo for some of his reckless driving, but he's going to be back in the Red Bull family, not in the big car, but in the sister team, Toro Rosso. But you ask Kvyat, I'm sure he's just happy to be back in Formula One. Would love to see him do well, a little redemption after his fall from grace with the Red Bull team. And how he exited F1, so he's looking for a little revenge in a sense. And then right now, Brendan Hartley is driving the second car, but it's unconfirmed that he'll come back. Talks of a younger guy coming in from another category. I, for one, would like to see Hartley drive next year. He's been a solid driver, very personable on the grid, and I would just like to see him stick around. Moving down to Sauber, Kimi Räikkönen, stepping down from the big seat at Ferrari. He's going to be racing in Sauber, which he started his career in, so he signed a 2-year contract, and everything's pointing in the direction that this is kind of his last hurrah. He's going to help Sauber with their car development. He's an old guy. He's definitely going to be a leader in the garage. He's going to be a leader for his young teammate Antonio Giovinazzi, and he's going to be a very valuable piece to them. But don't expect to see him on the podium as often as he was with Ferrari. But maybe they could surprise us. Maybe Sauber could come up and be the David to the Goliath and knock some guys off. I would like to see that personally. But Kimi Räikkönen taking a step down and finishing his career out by the looks of it with the Sauber team. And then Antonio Giovinazzi, 1-year contract. He's gotten some spot reserve races here and there and done all right with that. And would like to see him come in. That's another young guy who can come in, make an impact, gain some following with the younger generation of Formula One fans, and just mix up the grid a little bit. And last but not least, Williams. If there's one team that I would like to see turn it around the most, it's Williams. They went from being the 4th best team on the grid to last place in 1 year. They got everything wrong. The aero was wrong. They have a Mercedes engine, but an engine alone is not going to get you around the track. So they're completely mixing it up. New driver grid. George Russell coming in on a multi-year deal. He's a young, talented driver, just won the Formula 2 championship, so he definitely deserves a shot at F1. And then Robert Kubica hasn't raced in F1 since the early 2000s. This is a guy who is the ultimate comeback story. Suffered a severe rally accident where they had to completely reconstruct his whole right forearm, right elbow, right hand. From my understanding, he has very little feel and senses in his right hand, but they've constructed a driving system for him and a steering wheel for him that he only controls with his left hand. I was watching some onboard of him, and all his right hand is doing is just guiding the wheel. There's no fine movements. It's very, unrefined. It's just kind of there holding onto the wheel, and his left hand is both doing the upshifting, the downshifting, all of his steering wheel controls, and pretty much all the steering input. So for him to even get a shot to come back to F1 is just a story in itself. But if he were to come in and Williams turns the car around and he comes out and just does a lights out performance, that's the kind of stuff they make a movie out of. So it would be very interesting to see how that plays out. I'm wishing him the best of luck. But 2019 is looking a treat of a season. And along with all these new driver changes, we're going to have some regulation changes. A lot of people talking about the front wings getting simplified, so that's creating less dirty air. Hopefully that results in better racing. They're limiting all the complex aero on stuff like brake ducts. You aren't going to have winglets on. They're reducing the side of barge boards and making them simplified, so that's, again, the same theme of less dirty air, which makes it easier to follow the guy in front of you. And then they're increasing the DRS flap from 65 millimeters to 85 millimeters, which that's going to make a world of difference in opening your DRS and, getting around that guy in front of you. So they're really shooting for more passing next year, which is always more exciting. You pay to watch the races, you pay to go to the track to see passes. So I'm glad to see F1 making those changes and listening to the fans that the racing's been kind of stale as of late. So 2018 was a great year. Hopefully 2019 will be even better. I'm, for one, looking forward to it, and we'll get back with everybody in Australia in 2019 when those lights go green and we're racing again.